Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Let's talk about Anachrony. Now, this is going to be the big box, the infinity box, with everything included. And the game, if you're not familiar with it, is set up on the table here in front of me. Now, this video is going to be a first thoughts, first impressions, and honestly, a conversation or a series of questions I have for you, the audience, and those that really like Anachrony, because there's some things I want to figure out. There's some stuff that after two plays, or one and maybe three-fourths plays, I'm still getting comfortable with what exactly this game is and what it's trying to be on my table. That being said, if you are a fan of Anachrony, we have a full gameplay, a full three-player gameplay in the edit bay currently being worked on. So hit the subscribe button down below. Stay tuned, stay connected here. This won't be the last time you see us engaging with this game. And I suppose I should go ahead and spoil part of the conversation. I really like this game. I really like this game. We just did a top 10 Euro list of games, and there were some complaints there, some commentary there that there wasn't as many heavy Euros as people would have liked to see. I mean, sure, I had things like Feudum in there, but honestly, I've only been in the hobby for 3 or 4 years, and a lot of these heavier games, while I love them when I get a chance to play them, a lot of them present a significant barrier to play, right? This ranging from a 3 to a 4.5 or 4.2 when it comes to the weight scale over on BGG, depending on what expansions you're including. This is a hard game to table. And I think I'll start the conversation there with the caveat that I like this game a lot, with the fact that I think it's probably in my top 10, potentially even top 5 Euros, or moving into that position as we play more. But now, let's dig into the nuance or the elements here. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with Anachrony, I'm not going to be doing a full overview or teach or anything here, but I'll tell you this. Anachrony is a Euro game, right? It's a worker placement game where you're collecting resources and converting those resources or converting your actions as efficiently as possible into a series of points. The interesting thing about Anachrony is not only is it a game that has so many different modules, upgrades, equipment, buildings, expansions, and characters that even have asymmetric powers and player powers. But Anachrony also functions with this idea or this core concept of time travel, where you can borrow from the future so that you can build in the past, but then at some point, as time continues moving forward, you need to go back to pay back or return what you've borrowed. And that is probably one of the biggest and weirdest twists in this game. Instead of taking on debt that represents a dollar amount, you're taking on debt that represents a mech, or represents a worker like a scientist, or even potentially taking on debt that represents resources and workers and scientists and a mech. And you have to construct the correct buildings that allow you to use your resources to transport back, paying back what you borrowed at a bit of an additional cost, but at the same time converting and scoring victory points, scoring honor, moving your society forward. This game has a lot going for it. Now, let's get into it's as close to an overview as I can do. Let's get into that initial engagement experience. First off, the Infinity Box was absolutely insane. A ton of different trays and components that allow you to organize and store everything that you have. But here's the thing, for a game that's shipping with I don't know how many expansions, I believe we have 2 or 3 full rulebook expansions included in here. It took us close to an hour and a half, 2 hours, and not me, my good friend Sean, took him an hour and a half to just punch, organize, and structure everything. And it's really, really appreciated. And I don't know that there's a way that a game could have made it easier to do that. When you look into the box, everything is stacked perfectly. It's custom cut. It's designed to store effectively and efficiently, and there's a rulebook that comes along with it that helps you store it. But man, that hour and a half, that price point that it took just to organize this game so it could function on the table, it was a hefty, hefty introduction to a game that was already hard to get to the table. And then Sean also, thank you to him, took the time to watch multiple gameplays, watch a how to play a video, read through the rule book, and all we did was learn the base game, and that still took multiple hours to learn a full, half of a play to start to slightly understand. And even as we were playing and functioning, there were still moments where we were double checking iconography or double checking exactly what some scoring conditions meant. Now, all that being said, I think it's a fairly accessible game for the weight that it is, but I find that I love these games, but the approach to them, just because of my schedule and because of how we're trying to accomplish things, the people that are sitting around the table, and the fact that I'm not usually the one that's learning games, the approach to them is very, very pricey. So Anachrony sits there. It is a heavy game to introduce. It is a game that I was and am still incredibly intimidated by. And that cost of introduction was steep. But now that I've played, I feel very comfortable saying I could run and teach the base game, and it would probably be about a 20-minute teach with some questions mixed in and stuff there, which isn't bad for the degree of complexity and degree of potential scoring outcomes just the base game has alone. But what I don't know yet is the expansions. I don't know the modular or asymmetric player boards, and I don't really know every optional card and tile that comes out, so I'll still be checking that throughout the course of the game. The game isn't overly complex when it comes to what you're doing. On your turn, you're going to be moving up and assigning workers and placing them into different worker placement zones, triggering either free or more direct actions on your player board that are exclusive to you, and public actions on the main board that are limited based off of who's gone there and how many people are able to. The puzzle of this game, where it starts to shine through, is how you're combining, how you're starting to build a production chain that generates resources, that allows you to borrow, go back, transport, get rid of, encourage your workers, and continue that cycle until you have something up and running, and then the cataclysm happens. This meteorite strikes down onto the planet, and you have to figure out a way to escape from the main city so that you can move society forward, so that you and your cult or tradition can continue progressing humanity into the future. It's the whole narrative of this game. And again, I really liked it. Now, I told you I had some questions for you, and here's going to be the first one. I've played the base game, and I intend to play the base game a few more times. Jan and I, now that we know it, will 100% be doing some two-player experiences with this. I liked it at three-player way more than I liked it at two-player. But here's what I'd like to know from you, the audience. I don't know where to start with the expansions, or with the solo mode, or with the asymmetric player boards. That's just the reality of it. And so let me know. I was very lucky with something like Terraforming Mars, where the first time I played, we introduced the best elements of the expansions in, and it really made that experience shine. And so if we're going to be producing more content on this game, let me know your sense of things. Where do I go? Do I go from here to solo? Do I keep focusing on the two-player mode and include maybe asymmetric player boards, or bring in one or two of the other expansions? There's some that look really interesting. There's the additional resources. There's the exploration or sort of the fighting board that you can add in. I've glanced at them. But yeah, I really have no confident pathway forward when it comes to where I'm supposed to grow with this game. And what I would like to not do is I'd like to not just grab everything and read everything and attempt everything and end up having a worse experience with a game because I just really wasn't ready to dip into it. Along with that, let's continue talking about this. First off, I absolutely love this. And this is a Euro game that has a full art and storybook that has some of the, if not the best, writing and character and world development that I have seen in almost any game, period. And for me, I think that feeling, I think that aesthetic shines through. The fact that the designers understand the world they're playing in, the mechanics all match up. It seems to sequence, and it just makes sense as you play. And before every gameplay, I've been dipping in and reading a little section of the rulebook, understanding more about the cultures and the peoples and the traditions and the locations that we're going to and why certain resources and items and actions all work together. And as far as I can tell, there's a meaning and a justification for everything that's been designed here. And that's so cool to see in a Euro game. It's something that I don't feel like I get from a lot of the Euro games. I mean, in fact, most Euro games are defined as something where the theme is sort of pasted on, and I suppose this one could be as well. You could probably change it. You could just strip the theme from it, and it would still be a functional game. You know, cubes change to points, and then you score. But it's so much better because it's not. So much better because I can dig into it, because I can understand it, because everything has a justification, and in the design principles, in the way you formulate. Yeah, I mean, Anachronies, it's absolutely incredible. So, things I liked the most and things I liked the least. Let's start with things I liked the most, and I'd love to hear your opinions on these as well, because I think they're going to be different depending on how you're approaching this game. I approach the game as a thematic and story-driven player who also enjoys Euro games. I really enjoy the personal development on your own board. I loved building the buildings, getting an engine up and running. I could imagine having a scientist or an engineer that was always going to this location to encourage his people to work, and then one of them is inserting a yellow cube from taking the uranium from one location with these big tongs and placing it into the portal, which then opens up this rift door that you're stepping through with all these resources you need. Everything to me felt visual, felt thematic. I could see what my society had done, and I could see what the other societies had been doing as well. These giant ships that were sailing across the ocean with a war captain who, no matter what, was telling his people they had to work. There was no excuses, no exceptions. This is a war vessel, and if you're on this vessel, you shall be put to work. Or the symbiotic, nature-loving people who were very kind with their people, who were working together with nature and resources and collecting as much water as they could, changing and turning that water into the, trading it into the marketplace or converting it into other resources. They'd really harnessed the power of life and one of these life-giving elements. All three of us, even though we were playing on standard boards, had vastly different experiences and different approaches to the game, and all of us were strategically in the game. So I loved that narrative through line. Loved what this Euro game eviscerated. There's an E word there that I'm not sure. If you know what that word is, let me know. Evoked, something like that. I also really liked the meteor strike that hit. The tile, as you're moving down the progression of the game, there's multiple endgame triggers, but one of the core points is a meteor is going to strike in the future. In our game, it was 4 stages forward. I like that. I thought that had an interesting change to the game. The way that you played, the fact that you no longer had access to some of the resources or some of the items or some of the locations that you did originally because that meteorite had struck, that felt accurate and also felt good in a frustrating way. Now, what did I not like? I really like this game, but what did I not like? I think the time travel portion is incredible, but I think it takes a lot of understanding to maximize it. I don't even feel like in the full gameplay we did, I fully utilized or followed along with how sequencing and gaining and trading resources back and forth was meant to work in a reasonable manner. I think that gets better with future plays, like most games that require a degree of knowledge do, but that is probably the thing that I would emphasize and do my best to teach and display and help people with, and I still think they'd miss it as they played. I also think the Cataclysm, even though I love the meteorite, introduced elements that I wasn't prepared for and I wouldn't have been prepared for if I hadn't played the game before. So really the first game session of this and probably the second game session of this is heavily a learning game. you approach and figure it out and get your teeth sunk into it, and then you dig back in. I don't like the rule book. I don't like how much there is in terms of what you can do, but I'm also very excited about that. And so that's not necessarily a positive or a negative specifically. What else? There is something else that I don't like. What would it be? You know, I'm really not sure. I was very, very, very charmed with this game. And the opportunity for where we can go in the future feels really good. Outside of those two limiting factors, just that additional knowledge that you need to have. Now, there's a bit of randomness when it comes to tiles that are being cycled out, cards and resources that are being generated, but there was almost always a way to accommodate for that to some degree. I even ended up being able to build some of these mega structures and utilize them to, to a reasonable success. So, I don't know if I, at the moment, have a ton of things to criticize. It deserves to be where it is. Yeah. So, this is my first impressions of Anachrony. It is a pretty incredible game. A remarkably well-produced and well-thought-out and well-designed Euro approach. And again, we have a full gameplay coming to the channel very soon, along with probably some other content. So stay tuned down below. Keep connected with us. We are super excited. We're super excited to be covering this and covering a lot more Euro titles and other games going down in the future. This video, by the way, was entirely made possible because of the generous support of our Patreon community, specifically Kevin, who sponsored the gameplay video for Anachrony. And so if you're enjoying this content, if you're excited to see more Euro stuff here on the channel, swing over to Patreon, back us for $1 or $5. There's a lot of other content there. I think there's about 100 unique posts over there, along with some campaign gameplay and some future stuff that we're working on. I think a drunk gameplay of Brass Birmingham. There's some good stuff coming. So all that being said, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. I'll see you next time. Thank you.